to episode 2 of the Cleveland Black History series, a partnership between Truth Be Told and Stand Tall Academies. I want to tell you the story today about an amazing man, an inventor, a man of first, whose name is Garrett Augustus Morgan. But before that, just want to remind you that if you haven't already become a subscriber to this channel, please do. We want to increase the number of subscribers that we have to our video channel. So, of course, if you hit the like and subscribe and notification buttons, then you'll be notified when we have new releases and our subscriber numbers will go up. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to attach another smaller video just to let you know that Truth Be Told is now in virtual reality. And so if you are in virtual reality, either with a Oculus headset or Oculus Quest 2 or any one of the other virtual reality headsets, then you can meet us in virtual reality and you can see presentations there as well. And if not you, maybe you might know someone else. Okay, here we go. We're jumping into it. Garrett Augustus Morgan. He was born in Claysville, Kentucky, 1877. He was born to formerly enslaved parents. By the time he came along, they were free. He is the 7th of 11 children. Now, Garrett's paternal grandfather was also a general in the Confederate Army and all that entails. So now we know that his paternal grandfather, who was General John Morgan, owned his paternal grandmother and raped her. I mean, we can't sugarcoat it. That's just exactly what it was. When you own someone and you are in control of every asset and every facet of their lives, they didn't have any assets, every facet of their lives, then there's really no such thing as consent. You know, we hear this fairy tale about Thomas Jefferson and his enslaved female servant, Sally Hemings. And for a long time, people kind of made it out to be some kind of romantic thing. But I just don't believe that. There was no consent involved. We all know that even after slavery in the Jim Crow South, white men would do to black women whatever they wanted to with impunity. But his paternal grandfather is John Morgan. He's a general in the Confederate Army. So you can Google that and get more information. Now, Garrett grew up in Kentucky and he left home really early. He left home at about 14 years of age. That was about 1891 when he left home. So about 30 years after the end of the Civil War, it was during the period of Reconstruction and all that entails. He didn't go very far, but he was escaping the Jim Crow South. But he was out in front of the Great Migration, which technically didn't start till about 1910. So he was out in front of it. And the Great Migration was simply African Americans fleeing the Jim Crow South in search of better living, better wages, not being afraid that someone's going to kick in your door and lynch you in the middle of the night, not being afraid that you didn't step off the sidewalk quick enough when a white person came by you, or that you gave somebody the wrong look, or for any one of a great number of things that you could run afoul of and end up paying, with your life. So he leaves the Jim Crow South and he's headed north, and he doesn't go very far. He goes to Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, as the crow flies, Cincinnati is only about 20 miles from Claysville, Kentucky, where he's born. So it's just across the Ohio River, and he is technically in the north. And in Cincinnati, Garrett, who only had maybe like an 8th grade education, furthered his education by finding a tutor, because he wanted to continue to learn, and that will become obviously why as we continue to look at his life and talk a little more. So he continued his education with a tutor, and after some time, he decided he was going to move north yet again, and a little further north, and that brought him to Cleveland, Ohio. Arriving in Cleveland, Ohio, 1895, he began work as a sewing machine repairman. Now, Garrett married, and then he married again. And his second wife, I said he was a man of first. His second wife was from Czechoslovakia. Garrett Augustus Morgan, and his wife became the first interracial couple in Cleveland, Ohio. So he's this a sewing machine repairman, and he's very inquisitive. He had to been to continue his education when he really didn't have to. He learned everything there is to know about sewing machines. He did this by tinkering and by challenging himself to just know the ins and outs of all the facets of it. I mean, if you're going to look at something and work with something every day, you might as well know about it. He quickly became the expert, the sought-after repairman for anything that will go wrong with sewing machine. He was working in the sewing machine repair shop. Well, eventually, he decided he was going to start his own business. That was his first business, first of many. So he started his own sewing machine repair shop. And along the way, he invented a few things. He invented what they call as a machine belt fastener. It was something that they used when you were maintaining a sewing machine. Maybe you were doing some maintenance. And he invented that. He didn't innovate it. He invented it. It didn't exist before he invented it. And then he put a foot into chemistry, believe it or not. He knew that the heat associated with the repetitive motion of a sewing needle up against wool was not good for the needles. Wool was a very commonly used fabric back at the time. So he put a foot into chemistry, and he developed a polish for sewing machine needles that allowed them to stay cool up against the repetitive motion of, the metal or steel needle rubbing up against wool fabric. He invented that. And then his foray into chemistry led him to develop a hair relaxer for men. If you think about it, back in those days, it was quite popular. Skin bleaching was possible. Hair straight was popular. Hair straightening was popular. Why? Because, believe it or not, and let's just be honest, many, not all, but a lot of blacks wanted to look as close to our Caucasian brothers and sisters as we could. And skin bleaching and straightening your hair and whatnot would get you closer to that. It's just how it was. I mean, let's keep it real. Being black was not popular. Being black was not easy. And some people, if they could put themselves in a better place, in a better light, by lightening their skin and straightening their hair. So he developed a hair straightener for men, and along with other oils and dyes, because it was quite popular at the time. And to round out his kit, his hair care kit, he also innovated. He didn't invent, but he innovated a new type of straightening comb. So, the straightening combs that, your mother used to put on the stove and straighten your hair with. Those were also very popular. These inventions and innovations came under another company. Now, he's already started a sewing machine repair shop, but these came under another of his businesses called the G.A. Morgan Hair Products Company. So now he's started essentially two businesses. Now, being the true innovator that he was, he began experimenting with what he called a safety hood. It was a protective hood for firefighters and for workers whose jobs took them into areas where the air was unsafe or toxic. He called it a safety hood, and it would become the predecessor to what we would call in these modern days a gas mask. And after several iterations, he produced it and he sold it under the umbrella of yet another company that he started called the National Safety Device Corporation. Now, to avoid the vestiges of what it meant to be black in America, he knew a very well-known and rich industrialist. Maybe you heard of him, a man by the name of J.P. Morgan. Okay, J.P. Morgan, of no relation. J.P. Morgan advised him to disassociate himself from his safety hood as much as he could because of the racism that still existed all over the country. So what Garrett did was he would hire a white man to go with him to make his sales pitches, his sales calls. And he would play the role of the assistant to this white man. And it worked. And with following JP Morgan's advice, Garrett began to sell his safety hoods all across the nation, worldwide even. He landed a contract with the United States Navy. He landed a contract with the United States Army. And he got several international awards for his safety hood. Now, because of the over-industrialization of Cleveland, because Cleveland was growing, and the lack of conservation, because it wasn't really a big thing in those days. I mean, what happened was you built the factory next to the river, you dumped all your stuff in the river, and you kept it moving. I mean, that's the reality of it. So the Cuyahoga River was really, really polluted at one point. Well, Cleveland had another problem, a water quality problem. And the residents of Cleveland were saying, hey, there's something not right with this water. The water is tainted. The water is dirty. And in fact, some early outbreaks of disease in Cleveland were loosely attached to the quality of the water. So to address these issues, engineers in the city of Cleveland constructed cribs, water cribs. A water crib is simply a way to bring water from, in this case, Lake Erie to the city water treatment plant and then distribute it within the neighborhoods and residences of Cleveland. Chicago has a lot of water cribs. There's probably some up New York. Probably any major metropolitan area that has access to fresh water at some point or another has probably constructed a water crib. And it's called a water crib simply because there's a structure built around the intake to make sure that only water gets in and not like seaweed and dirt and whatever else. So it's called a water crib, but that's what it is. Cleveland constructed one and then another and then another because Cleveland was growing. Now, I told you that Garrett had gotten out front of the Great Migration, which started officially in like 1910. However, now he's in Cleveland. It's some years later. And Cleveland was a very, very popular destination for people leaving the Jim Crow South, for people leaving the South. It was Cleveland, Chicago, New York, Newark, New Jersey, Milwaukee, a lot of industrial cities because there was work. So Cleveland is growing by leaps and bounds, and we have this water problem, this water quality problem. And then we have this water quality problem because all of the factories in the industry, Republic Steel and all the rest of them, are dumping their stuff right there in the river, which is where we are getting our water. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember and are from Cleveland, but the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. The Cuyahoga River caught on fire. That's how dirty it was. That's how polluted it was. So these cribs, the engineers put out into Lake Erie, like a mile offshore, where there was clean, or at least cleaner water. As the population began to explode and boom, they built another one a little further out and another one a little further out, et cetera, and so on. Then, on June 25th, 1916, with the construction of another water crib. Now this one, the furthest out, 5 miles out. Okay, they've gone from 1 mile to 5 miles out. Garrett's safety hood will once again gain national, in fact, international attention. Because during the construction of this crib, the tunnel that the workers were working in, they would tunnel underneath the bed of the lake. They would bring the fresh water into a pipe, which was under the bed of Lake Erie, and they would tunnel it back. Workers working in that tunnel, they hit a pocket of natural gas, and it worked its way into the tunnel and exploded. It trapped 8 workers. And then other workers descended into the tunnel as a rescue party, and they were overcome by the gas that was still in the tunnel as well. Garrett Augustus Morgan and his brother showed up with their safety hoods. And they went into donning their safety hoods. They descended into this tunnel and they brought out the first and only 2 survivors of this disaster. Of the men that went into the tunnel, only 2 of them came out alive, except for Garrett Morgan and his brother. After it was all said and done, 20 men were killed. So you had 8 originals, and then the rescue party that went down to get them was about 10 or 11 or 12 people, and then a few others beside. It was 20 men killed altogether. But Garrett and his brother, they rescued 2 men still alive, and then they brought out all of the bodies. By the way, in this tunnel that was filled with poisonous gas that didn't overcome them because of his safety hood, right? Worldwide fame all over again. Now, what happened was fire departments everywhere wanted this hood, as you can imagine. And they started ordering. He started getting orders from everywhere. And what happened next can only be explained, at least in my mind, as a perfect example of how horrendously stupid all of the Jim Crow laws and societal constructs were around those actually were. Because when the people heard about this marvelous rescue because of this safety hood, and every fire station in America and beyond wanted it, they ordered them. Then the newspaper in Cleveland snapped a picture of Garrett and his safety hood, the inventor of the life-saving device, the inventor of the device that saves lives, the inventor of the device that was the only thing that could safely get someone in and out of this dangerous and horrifically deadly situation. All of the fire stations in the American South canceled their orders when they saw that the inventor was this black man. Now, again, that's just stupid. Okay? That's just horrendously stupid. So the safety of the fire department personnel, the safety of the men, nothing mattered. It just that this man, the inventor, was black and nothing good can come from anybody black. So they canceled their orders. Garrett is reported, I told you he was a man of first. Garrett is reported to be the first black man in Cleveland to have a car. I never knew that. Now, being his creative self, he soon realized that there was a problem that needed solving. Well, he had seen several accidents in intersections. And you got to remember, there's a lot of different modes of transportation. There's still horses and buggies and buckboards and different modes. There are automobiles, but there are other forms of, bicycles and whatnot. And he had witnessed a few too many accidents. And so it was a problem that needed to be solved. So he did what he did before. He innovated. There were traffic control devices of some sort. And there were, of course, traffic cops and whatnot. But he put his mind to work and he wanted to come up with a better way of managing traffic in intersections. And he innovated the first 4-way traffic signal where you could see from wherever direction you were coming from, you could see clearly you should be going or you should be not going. So he invented the modern day traffic signal. He patented it in 1923, and he patented it in America, he patented it in Canada, and he patented it in the United Kingdom, Great Britain. It was so successful and so popular that eventually he sold it to General Electric. He sold it to General Electric for $40,000. Now, in 1920 something dollars, or in 2022 dollars, it would be a little north of $700,000 is what he sold the patent to General Electric for. Garrett went on to establish the first all-black country club. It was in Wakeman, Ohio. So If you're from the Cleveland area, you know where Oberlin College is. Wakeman, Ohio is not far from Oberlin College. So this would be south and west of Cleveland. He established the first all-black country club, where a place where people could go and they could, golf and have their, organizations and have their meetings and gatherings and get-togethers and cotillions and all that. And he went on to found the first black community newspaper in Cleveland, which was called the Cleveland Call. Today it's called the Call and Post, and is still in circulation today. Garrett Augustus Morgan, he died in Cleveland, Ohio in 1963. So he died about 5 years before I was born. But he was a wonderful inventor, innovator, came from being the child of enslaved persons in Kentucky, made his way north, made a name for himself, helped humanity in so many ways. And we only mentioned a few of his innovations, but there are others. So I would encourage you to just do a Google search on Garrett Morgan and see what else you can find about him. This is his high school. This is a high school that is named for him, the Garrett Morgan High School. It is the high school for leadership and guess what? Innovation. Yes. It's a wonderful facility. It's far from the outside. I went and took some pictures of it and just kind of looked at it. It's marvelously done. It's one of the newer high schools in Cleveland, Ohio. And there's also a water treatment plant that is named for him, the Garrett Morgan water treatment plant. And they named it for him because of the rescue that he effected when Cleveland was building one of his water cribs. So again, that's a great testament to a great man. Garrett Augustus Morgan, a man who could innovate, a man who could invent, a man of first, the first man to have an interracial marriage in Cleveland, the first man to own a car in Cleveland. Just a man of first in every way. We salute him, and we hope that you learned a little bit about a great Clevelander. Although he wasn't born in Cleveland, he lived and he died in Cleveland. Garrett Augustus Morgan. Like I always say, you can find Black history anywhere because our history is truly everywhere. So until we shall meet again with another installment of Black History Cleveland, we'll see you again soon.
If you would like to see more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification icon to receive our new releases. If you would like to assist Truth Be Told in our mission to preserve African American history, which is American history, please share this video with your children, family, and friends. Truth Be Told, you can find Black history anywhere because our history is everywhere.